Apologies, Councillor Dennis Clark and the CEO, Colin Biles. Confirmation of previous minutes, the meeting for the Tuesday 21st of April, moved by Councillor Higgins, seconded Councillor Webb. All those in favour? Against? Carried. The minutes of the special meeting on the 16th of April, moved Councillor Robinson, seconded Councillor Moore. All those in favour? Against? Carried. The meeting of the special meeting held on the 28th of April, moved Councillor Robinson, seconded Councillor Pomeranke. All those in favour? Against? And the minutes of the special meeting on Tuesday the 12th of May, moved Councillor Pomeranke, seconded Councillor Webb. All those in favour? Okay, now we've passed and everything. Any business arising from any of those minutes, please? No. Okay. Public question time, there will be nil. Questions on notice, there's nil. Questions without notice. Councillor Webb.
Right. With some of the late notices that we've been getting in, as far as I know, there is no time frame listed anywhere on council for when people should get their information in. So I would like to move to include a definite time frame of 1 week prior to the next council meeting for any items to be included in the agenda, and for all of that, for that information to be added to all media, internet, newsletter, etc.
Discussion here at the moment. Is there something there?
Yeah, I need to, that's all actually covered in the Act. So there's no need for council to be moving motions. Everything about when, like, I don't know whether you're referring to the late reports, but if you are referring to the late reports, it's up to council whether late reports are accepted, and given the information in them, I think we can. There's no, critical decisions, well, that we need to research. One of them might not go all the way, but we'll see what happens when we get to it. But all that about timeframes and everything else, it's all in the Act. It's just there. Certain days before the agenda closes, so many days before the meeting and everything else. That's all covered off in the Act.
But I think what Councillor Webb was getting at was, is there somewhere for the public to see that their articles or agenda items can be put in before the week, like the Tuesday before the council meeting is the deadline for that council meeting? Is there anywhere on the website that specifically says that? Because for the Washpool Hall, like, it's come in fairly late, and were they aware that of the timeframes required? Councillor Brown?
Look, the Washpool Hall one, I just sent that to people. It's not included in the agenda, and it's not because I want that to go forward in quite that way, but I think there's one step we need to do before that happens. So I just sent that for information, and I'll talk to it in general business, perhaps, what we need to, there's a step I think we should take before we, and that comes to the next meeting, and I think that's an ample time frame. I don't think there's any major problem with that, but I purely sent that out for councillors' information so that when I talk about it, you have some idea what I'm talking about in general business.
Okay, Councillor Webb?
Yeah, well, it's not just that one, but more often than not, when we do receive something, it's coming in round about the Thursday or what have you, when we are normally receiving our agendas. So a timely reminder for people to know that they need to get it in a week before council is going to be holding their meeting. Otherwise, staff is going to be run ragged.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I told them at the time they were sending that in that they would probably miss the deadline for the agenda, but as it wasn't a particularly difficult thing that it might or might not come in as a late item, that would be, up to first the officer that got it and the rest of it. So I mean, I think where it is, it's fine for that one. You're muted, Sue. You're talking, but you're muted.
Intentionally. Okay, so we'll leave it as a question and perhaps look at what we could possibly put on the website, something like that, to just reinforce it perhaps.
Yep.
Any other questions? I think, yeah, Councillor Brown?
I've got several, so well, a few anyway. I just want to ask Peter this one, and it'll, obviously it's part of the reports later on, but this is the time for questions. With the road resheeting budget, when did you sort of become aware that it would exceed the allocated budget? Did you hear my question, Peter? Sorry. Can't hear you, Peter.
Yeah, just adjusting volumes and things like that. We're just managing the echo and things like that. Yeah, the program for the resheet. Obviously, we get the reports in on the costs for that program. It became evident, I suppose, probably around mid-February, I suppose, that we look to be going to exceed the budget. We also, I suppose, well, that's the answer to the question, around about mid-February.
Right, no worries. That's fine. I mean, we did the budget review February. I mean, I could see that it was in trouble there, but so that makes sense. So, yep. Now, another question, and it goes to that'll come up on the pavements list, but it's and our favourite contractors, Neo Infrastructure, but the roads, the way the roads for the new seals have been done, because I mean, I just think it doesn't quite comply with council's procurement policy, but so where we've got each road individually named in there and an amount to them, but who told you to do it that way?
It's not a matter of being told to do it that way. We priced a number of roads and gave opportunities for contractors to price those works. And on the basis of the best prices for those, the works were awarded to the various contractors. So BBE were the lowest price on a couple of the roads, and Neo were the lowest price on the other roads.
Yeah. Well, I figured that was sort of the case, but the reality is the procurement policy says you can't do that. Well, you can get the prices, but then when you pay one contractor, you can't do it by dividing it up.
I'm not sure that that's correct, Councillor Brown. The individual projects are individual projects. They're not a complete project. If it were a single complete project, then you're quite right, you wouldn't break it up. But the individual roads will run as individual projects and they have individual bills associated with them.
Oh, look, that's fine. I'll talk to you later about it, and I want to understand it a bit more and get a picture of it. So we'll deal with it later. That's fine. Thank you. What else have I got? No, I think that was my two main questions.
I'm juggling keeping my computer quiet while Peter's talking, keeping my microphone off. So yeah, you'll have to bear with me. Councillor Pollard?
Yeah, I've just got one. Peter, we were given some parameters that you used to cost the road works, the resheeting. Now, I'm assuming that that wasn't used last year to work out what the cost, what it would cost us. Has it been used for next year's budget?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Pollard. Yes, it's a significant deficiency in the way we've gone about the program. We've recognised that, and we've taken steps to implement a process whereby various council staff have the opportunity to grow and build on their skills. We've used some tools to be able to facilitate that, and we have, as of yesterday, I had a look at where we're up to. We'll have a fully costed program this year, including all the preliminaries associated with the works, and again broken down into the individual roads for the resheet program. So we'll have the ability to track our costs as we're going through the year and be confident that the works will either be within budget, or we'll know why at the time if there is an overrun for any particular reason.
Does that mean there'll be a change to the budget as currently being discussed for resheeting?
No, Councillor Pollard, no, there'll be no, and I understand your question to be for the 2021
Correct.
capital program.
Correct.
No, we're using, so from the budget we've got, we've identified a range of roads. We'll go through the process of advising council in due course and going through the discussion on those. But at this stage, we've identified the range of roads. We've counted the culverts. We've, width the roads, etc., materials, where we're getting the materials from, with pits, etc. Whether we're carting with the A double, or whether we're carting with a single trailer. All of those elements of it. So effectively, we get to what is the budget? The budget is there. What's the road mix within that? Add it up together so that we are within the budget allocation.
So you're saying that this year was a good estimate, is that right?
That's correct. This year was simply based on a kilometre basis, and that whilst council have been able to carry that in the past for around that sort of money, I'm not convinced that it's the best way to go. It's certainly not the way that that estimating is usually carried out for it. We've given it a go for a couple of years. We got lucky on a couple of years, and and this year we certainly weren't. We've been caught with our pants down fairly well, and implementing some processes to improve that.
So next year will be closer. I think that was the question I should have asked.
Yes, Councillor Pollard, that's correct.
Councillor Brown, then Councillor Robinson.
I'll let Merv go first. He was actually before me, but you didn't see. Might not have seen. Okay.
My question is regarding to Peter as well. Underspent on some of our road construction. Old Traori Road with 26,000 underspent, and yet I've had 2 complaints about that road, and I know you and Peter and went and had a look at it. Old Reservoir Road with 48,000, nearly 49,000 underspent, and yet when we go to Belalia East Road, we spent 208,000 over budget. So who makes those decisions, and how come that our estimates are out on those roads? I know I received the email yesterday regarding the Belalia East Road and the culverts, you put in, but when we're getting complaints regarding a road like Old Terrarie Road, and yet we still had money in the budget to do something towards it, it's unspent.
Thanks, Councillor Robinson. It's unspent, but we did the section of road that was identified to be done. There are... Manage the volume here.
You'll have to mute, Sue, because it's really feeding back.
So, again, a detailed estimate of any particular piece of road will identify what the quantum of the works are. You can certainly see across all of the roads there, you divide them by 75 or 76 kilometres, whatever it is, then you'll get a value that doesn't represent the work that's necessarily involved in each project. So you've got under expenditure, you've got over expenditure on your mix of roads, simply because of the quantum of work that's involved in each of those individual projects. To say that you're underspent on a road, well, when you price per kilometre of road on the basis of, you know, it's $1.72 million and you divide it by 70, of course you're going to get under expenditure on roads, and of course you're going to get over expenditure on roads, because the roads are not identical. So there will always be that. So to say that we had under expenditure on Old Terrarie, we did the section of Old Terrarie Road that was identified. You've got a pit that's right next to the road effectively, so it's going to be a cheap one to do. But if you're dividing it by 76, it won't look that way. So the values in the budget are simply a division of the overall budget by the total length of road. So it's not an estimate. It's a guide at best. As indicated, further in the reports, I will be providing a report to Council in the June meeting to give a full account of the expenditure on the roads, why the overrun on Belalee East, etc. There are reasons for it, and I'll be able to present those in June.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
All right, thank you. Look, the other one was just a quick question, and it's going to be in the budget, and it deals with some of the allocations. Like I spoke to David yesterday, and the current roadworks budget's at, I think it's at 2.2 million as of yesterday, but there's some journal entries, like there's rubble to be journal back to rubble stock. Where is that rubble that's to be journal back to rubble stock? It's obviously a significant amount of rubble. It's over $100,000 worth. So where is that located?
So there'll be rubble located in a number of areas. There is a quantity of rubble at Clare Quarry. So again, there's in the infrastructure report, you'll see there's a note there about the rubble that we get there. We're working with the quarry management there to make the best of their rubble production schedules. We get a good price for the rubble. We're paying a good price for the rubble down there. And again, it's about working with them to get the best result we can for the products that are available in their production schedule. So we do have a quantity of rubble there, and there'll be some other quarries that we have, others of our own pits, where we have a stock collection as well. Certainly there's quite a pile of rubble stock at Bottrell's pit from the blasting that was done only 12 months or so ago.
Okay, Councillor Robinson.
Just a clarification on that one, if I could see.
Okay.
The stock in Bottrell's pit is from what, 12 months ago from now, so it was in last budget. Is that right?
We've used some of that. I think, believe there was more that was processed this year. So whilst we blasted last year, we processed a quantity. I'm confident to say that within this last 12 months, we processed some more there.
Okay, so you've raised more there. Okay, no worries. Yep.
Councillor Robinson?
Just a comment. So, Peter, that would be the rubble that the stockpile at, well, one of the stockpiles at the 9 Mile, which has been crushed, pushed into a heap, but not used. So you do count that. I'll put a figure on that as part of that rubble stockpile. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Robinson. We'd do an evaluation of what the stock levels were at the end of last year, what was used in roads, and what we've got at the end of this financial year for that stock balance. It's effectively it's an asset, stock. So we've got to value it. We've got to know how much we've got, how much we've used, etc.
Okay. Any more questions without notice? Okay, motions on notice, there are nil. Motions without notice.
I've got a couple.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
The first one is, and I need to do it as a motion on notice, perhaps, so I'll do it now, but I can talk more about it later in general business. But so for the Washpool Hall, I believe the first thing we need to do is have our building inspector undertake a structural assessment of the building that's there before we perhaps approve a major build on. I think we need our building inspector to undertake a structural assessment of the existing building and bring that information back to the next council meeting. So I'll move that we ask the CEO to have the council's building inspector undertake a structural assessment of the existing Washpool Hall and its suitability for, or how much work it needs to do to be done to it to go forward. I think we need to know that before we go any further. You're muted, Sue. You are muted, Sue.
Yep, no, that's all right. It was just a question from Paula whether it was a financial motion, but it's not. So, yep, we can accept that motion.
I will,
You've got that
I will
motion,
second
have you,
that
Paula?
motion.
You've got
I
that
will
motion,
second that
Paula?
motion.
Yep. Second the motion, Councillor Robinson. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Councillor Brown, do you have another one?
Yeah, I do. Look, I have another one. And I think it's to do with the, look, we've got a significant budget overrun, and I understand Peter's going to report on that at the next council meeting, and that's fine. But it's something, we have an audit committee, and things like this should be referred to the audit committee to have an independent look at it. We're the custodians of ratepayers and public monies, and it is our job to look into that as councillors. That's what we're elected and entrusted to do. Now, we've got a significant budget overrun there, and that budget overrun should also be looked at by the audit committee and I would expect that, you know, once Peter's done his report to the next meeting, we're having an audit committee meeting in July. I think David might correct me, but it's either June or July where the other things will be dealt with. So I think this is another one that, you know, should definitely be referred to the audit committee for a look at.
So what is the motion, Councillor Brown?
That we refer the overrun, the over expenditure in the resheeting budget to the audit committee for consideration. The 11th of June meeting, I just saw David pop up.
did you want the date, the 11th of June on that motion?
Oh, look, the audit committee meeting on the 11th of June is fine, yeah. That makes it clear.
Okay, seconder is Councillor Pollard. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Any more motions without notice? Okay. Petitions, there are nil. Correspondence, you've all had a chance to read that. No deputations or visitors. Council committees, no. Someone like to move the operational services report be accepted? Councillor Webb, seconded Councillor Higgins. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
If you're talking to us, you're muted, Sue.
Gabby?
Thank you. Morning, everyone.
Morning, Gabby.
Morning.
Again.
The council will be joining with the Clare and Gilbert Valleys Council, Regional Council of Gorda and Wakefield Council to form the Mid-North Regional Assessment Panel. And that will be used when the new planning and design code is implemented, which at this stage they're saying July. They haven't given us a date yet, but it'll be some stage during July that will come into effect. We do have a memorandum of understanding for the RAP, and we need to actually form a recruitment panel to be able to elect some members of the RAP. And that recruitment panel will be made up of the assessment manager and one elected member from each council. So the council need to elect someone to fill that position. They'll need to be available during June to assess applications and do interviews. So there's a recommendation there that council elect whatever councillor to be a member of the recruitment panel for the Mid-North Regional Assessment Panel.
Gabby, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Where are these going to take place, these interviews, more than likely?
Most likely it will be in Clare, but probably it's a little bit central because we have to find fairly highly qualified people to go onto the panel, and it's most likely that those people are most likely going to be coming from Adelaide. There might be some from Clare that may have the qualifications, so it will most likely be at Clare.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, look, understand that. Councillor Robinson's currently our elected representative on our panel, but if he doesn't want to do it, I'm closer to Clare. But if he wants to do it, I'm more than happy to let him do it, or somebody else. Councillor Higgins has probably had a lot of experience in interviewing people over the years.
Speaker, please do.
Yep, I have experience with interviewing people over the years, yes. I'm happy to do this role if nobody else wants it, but I'm not jumping up and down for it. As in, if you've been doing it, then I don't feel the need to jump all over your spot.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes, I'm happy to do it, but I'm easy, it doesn't really matter.
Well, it seems like everyone's happy for you to do it, unless someone else would like to put their hand up. Councillor Pollard?
I'll nominate Councillor Robinson to be the member of the recruitment panel of Mid-North Regional Assessment Panel.
I'll second that.
And second, Councillor Webb had already seconded that. All those in favour?
I suppose.
Can't back out now, mate.
Against? That's carried. Okay. Now there is the planning progress report, Gabby.
Yes, and also the action list. I'm just waiting for Crown to advise me whether we can proceed with the bowling club transfer. So I'm just still waiting for them to read that.
Finally hearing something back from that. Fantastic.
And also the documents are ready to be signed for the sale of the land to Mr. Sanders.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Progress after a long time.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to authorise the signing of those documents, Gabby?
No, with council, I included all of that in the motion.
In the original motion, yeah.
So we don't need to move anything at this stage.
No.
Any questions to Gabby from the planning progress report? Okay. Now there is a late item. Council willing to accept the late item? We need a motion if we are.
I'll move that we accept the late items.
Moved Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Pollard. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Okay.
This is a section 49 development application which goes to the State Commission Assessment Panel for an approval, and it's for the Gladstone Jail, and it's just really replacing some gutters, downpipes and some fascias, but it comes to council for a comment. Generally we have 2 months to respond to this, but there has been some changes because of the COVID-19 to the Development Act, which says that we now have to respond within 15 days. And this is like something to speed up developments. So that's why this is a late item, because it only came in last week. So to meet the 15 days, we needed to bring it to council as a late item. And so there's just a recommendation there that council support that development and advise the Department of Environment.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Councillor Robinson had his hand up first. Did you have a comment or?
No, I was going to move the recommendation.
Okay, moved Councillor Robinson, seconded Councillor Brown. All those in favour? Against? Comment, Councillor Pollard?
Yeah, I did have a question. Now, there's absolutely no cost to council here at all, is there?
No, there's not. No. And
Do we get development fees?
No, we don't, because we're not the authority.
Section 49, mate.
Yeah, so we don't get any.
Nice try. Okay, nice try, Councillor Pollard.
There's fees very minimal.
Okay. Any more questions? We voted on that, didn't we? Yeah, cool. Regulatory services report.
Can everyone hear me?
You're
Yes.
on, Tomo.
Yes.
Yep.
You're
Thank
on
you.
here, Tomo.
Can't see
Thank
you,
you.
Tomo.
Yeah. Item
Flick the
4.
page and you'll see him somewhere, no, you won't.
No.
Turn your camera on, Tomo.
So I thought it was.
I want to see what your face looks like, Tomo. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. Yeah, the item for council decision is confirming the off-leash areas in the 6 townships. We carried out the consultation with all of the relevant management committees of the ovals, and except for Jamestown, where the JDA were asked to comment on that, so they've come in with an alternative. But whilst we expect existing limited use of the facilities, it does fulfil the requirements of our animal management plan required under the Act. So it's, I think it's important in meeting with all of the committees, it can be subject to further investigation and perhaps relocating that area within those areas. So what was done was it was identified as the area within the Oval Reserve, but again that cross that's shown on the plan there is just an indicative area, but it'll be within that particular location. Might be subject to some fine tuning and some possible alterations to the or extensions to the zone. But before we drive a peg in the ground or do any more, we will meet again with those committees to ensure that they're happy with what we're doing.
Councillor Webb, you have a question?
Yes. Looking at Gladstone and Laura, that is very off the road, and I doubt anybody's going to take their dogs that far off. It's not as not in the area that I thought it was going to be placed. When there probably will be a reassessment, I'd like to be involved with both sites, please.
Well, the reason that we did finally settle on those areas was after initial discussions with both the Laura and Gladstone Oval Management Committees. They both said that dogs regularly use the oval, so they leave a little bit of a mess on the oval. So they have been in that area anyway. So we just thought, well, it's adjacent to footy ovals. It gets them off the playing surface, but it's that was the reason that was selected.
In terms of the travellers, they're not going to go down to that back corner on either site. The length alongside Horrocks Highway would probably be preferable for Gladstone, and the section where campers sometimes park at Laura at the back end of the tennis courts would probably be the other.
Yeah, that's happened, but in campers using that area adjacent to the tennis courts, that's usually been the source of a complaint. So over the years, we've managed to steer people away from using that area. But as far as any signage goes, well, I guess we could put use some of our existing sign posts in the town and just direct people to that area with an off-leash area on the street signs.
Councillor Robinson?
My concern is with the Jamestown proposal, in that the reason JDA put their recommended site on the corner of Doon Terrace and R.M. Williams Way was that travellers who pull up to go to the toilet could then walk across the road and put their dog in an off-leash area instead of using Memorial Park. I don't think they'll go down to the Road Safety Centre, they probably don't even know where it is, to use that area. So that's the reason that JDA put in their proposal, which I think does make sense.
Yeah. One of the things we looked at moving in sort of identifying the areas was to make sure that dogs, or if there is an off-leash area, it's separated, reasonably separated from any existing facilities. And whilst the Act is pretty clear, it says that in these areas, the dogs must remain under the effective control of the owner. Now, that was the reason that former road safety centre was selected, because it did isolate that particular area from the Robinson Park area where the RV vehicles are. But that was one of the reasons. And also we thought it has a better parking area, well away from the two roads, the road junction. Minimal passing traffic, has some fencing there, not that fencing is a priority.
Okay. You have a reply to that, Councillor Robinson?
Yeah, well, I'd just like to comment again that travellers, I think, will still use Memorial Park, which is near the toilets, when they pull up.
Okay, councillor Pollard.
Yeah, they will still use it, and that's a good idea because it's properly fenced. I certainly don't see any reason to turn the block across the road from me into an off-dog area. And the road safety centre has a lot more things going for it. Tomo, do these have to be fenced or not?
Well, not really, but it's an option. But generally, the sites we've selected, it's probably not going to require any fencing. They're reasonably well isolated, but the one in Spalding might need to be looked at for a form of fencing, just some. Well, I wouldn't say it's a dog-proof fence, but just a wire fence of sorts to just
to delineate the area.
Yeah, but
Well, there is none across the road on the JDA proposed site, so that would be a cost to council to put that there. Well, for one, I'm not prepared to pay for that. The other thing is there's none for Kowtowie or Tarkowie or Stone Hut.
We did look at those and didn't think that the number of dogs being registered in that area that were likely to be town dogs sort of warranted it, but we can have another look at that. There is an area available in Kowtowie, but that's
good response, Tomo.
Yes, where the old tennis courts used to be.
Yeah.
We didn't look at Tarkowie, we didn't look at Stone Hut, and if necessary, we probably could come back to council with a spot in Kowtowie.
Yeah.
Councillor Robinson.
I'd just like to also comment again about Memorial Park. We don't want dogs in there because we've got a children's playground. We don't want dogs and little kids playing together.
Councillor Pollard.
Yeah, my mail is that, I mean, from observation, there's quite a few dogs get in there, but they're mainly local dogs and only half-size things. Most of the bigger dogs go down to the oval in the town. So whether we want to do something down there, I see what they're saying, but if we have to fence it, I don't think it's worth doing. The other one is already fenced. Let's use it.
So there's a motion or a recommendation here. Councillor Brown.
Look, I'll move the recommendation that's there. I mean, because there's still more consultation. It says in the motion there'll still be more consultation, right? So I think the bits that can be worked out can be worked out. In moving that motion, I'll note that I had some contact from people in Spalding, and that that they thought they were losing access to this particular piece of land. And I said, well, that's not the intention, as far as I understood it, and that it would still be accessible for parking during a football final. And it, you know, if in Spalding's case with the potential new courts and that, it might be that a second access to the back of the grandstand and everything has to be put through there. That's all to be determined later. So my view is that if it becomes an off-lead dog area, it doesn't preclude other uses that already exist over that piece of land, whether it was camping on it for a rodeo or anything else. I mean, and I think in the discussion over with Tomo, that's pretty well quite right. So I'm happy to move it on that understanding.
Alan? Alan, do you have a comment?
Just only that Gladstone and Laura both requested that the area, that any signage be placed there that just ask people not to use that if there's a function being held at the oval. So if there's football or cricket there, then don't use the off-leash area during that time, and the rest of all other times they were happy. So whether Spalding would like to have that included in any signage at the site, well, we could work that out with the management committee.
Okay, so we have the motion is moved by Councillor Brown. Is that a second by Councillor Pollard?
Yeah.
Thank you. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Activity report, Alan?
Only just to, we're still getting a number of developments that are commenced without approval, and some of them are well advanced by the time we get to them, but we haven't had any difficulty in getting them suitable for approval. Like the work so far that's been carried out, it's always managed, or so far we've been able to manage to make it fit within the code requirements. We will be commencing a reasonably, I'd say, severe enforcement action on a property in Laura, where that's been bubbling away for 12 months with no cooperation, no response from the owner. So we're now left with no choice. So that one will be underway and probably start the legal side of it. The legal action will probably commence in early June. The COVID-19, that's been really good. Again, the police, we've had contact with the police, and they're very happy with how it's all worked out. They haven't had any problems. Bit of encouraging news in that 2 businesses that voluntarily closed have now reopened and offering takeaway, and one in particular I think is doing very well. And also the Laura Gym, that's now, the gymnasium hasn't opened up, but classes are being held, limited to 10 outdoors, so that's also good to see that happening.
Okay, Councillor Webb.
Oh, I've
Councillor
lost.
Webb.
Yeah, I've lost it. No, sorry. I might be able to come.
Okay, there is a recommendation there that we accept the report or be noted. Councillor Robinson moved, seconded Councillor Pomerenke. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? That is carried. Okay. Infrastructure report. Peter? I'll just shut me down.
Okay, quite a bit going on in the infrastructure area. Trying to pick up most of the things there. Noted Councillor Moore picked up in the road maintenance, picked up that Valley View Road hadn't been graded. We looked into that one, and again, just a bit of a glitch with our operators with the iPad. So yeah, Valley View Road didn't get graded. Got a look at, assessed it, and moved on to another road. It wasn't considered needing grading. So it's just a bit of a clarification there. Probably going to jump around here a little bit. There are a number of projects there that are not going to be completed within the capital. I've got some notes on those. Stormwater inundation maps. Since writing the report here, I have had contact from the authority. They were just asking for a little bit of information on those. They're curious about whether a management plan was intended to be developed on the basis of getting that done. I indicated that we had the reports, and this was essentially to answer the question about whether the works there had been successful in mitigating flood, and that on the basis of those, that if there was an identified need for a follow-up stormwater management plan, that would be assessed in due course on the basis of the mapping. So they're going to be reconsidered at their June meeting. Grant opportunities there, just noting that that there is a grant round that closes on May 29th, and we're looking to put in a grant application for the bridge works, that the tender that is currently effectively sitting on the table. So that's for information. If council chose to do something with that report this meeting, then we'd lose an opportunity to put in a grant fund. So it can still sit on the table, there's no issue there. And probably just open to questions.
Councillor Robinson's got a question, I think.
Yes, sorry. With the, I'll just give this, go to someone else and I'll give this dog a bit of a boot. Come on, here.
Councillor Pollard.
Yeah, Peter, the weed spraying. Once again, it appears to be that was done a bit early. It's a bit ineffective. I've had people complain about weeds, and particularly in Oxford and Cambridge streets. They may not have been sprayed. I'm not sure which ones have, because I spray my own and keep that nice and tidy, as everybody should, but they don't. Can you tell us, are we still using that contractor that just whizzes around in his Kubota and doesn't sort of seem to have anything poisonous in his tank?
Councillor Pollard, no, we've taken that back in-house, so endeavouring to cover off on the weed spraying in-house at the moment.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, my question is regarding the Pine Creek Bridge and applying for a grant. Surely Mount Remarkable could put some money into this, and my suggestion should be, well, that we ask for 25% to cover half of our cost if we do get the grant. Is that feasible? I mean, they get the most benefit out of the bridge more than what we do.
The Local Government Act does cover off on contributions from councils where there is shared infrastructure at boundaries. I believe that the Pine Creek Bridge is probably just a little bit too far within our boundary to qualify for that. Probably, I think the best we could do is to gain their support in terms of any application we might make for funding through any program.
But shouldn't we just ask them for a contribution rather than putting it all on our, on our burden on our ratepayers? I mean, they can say no, but give them, well, I'd like to see them put something to it.
I think, look, Councillor Robinson, it would be useful to, we've got to a stage where we've got a preferred option to continue to look at, which is good. And that puts us in the position to be able to actually talk to them about something. So look, accepting that there's no harm in asking the question. We can certainly follow up with them and see whether there's any interest.
Councillor Brown.
Look, my comment on that would be that, and Councillor Robinson, I think, would remember this, but my understanding is when the whole road was done, it was done as a special local roads project, which was a joint application from both councils. And the bridge wouldn't be a problem if that, if that road wasn't done and the road was done somewhere else. So I think there's a reasonable argument for a joint application from both councils for some special local roads funding to contribute towards it. Now, I don't know whether with special local roads funding we can also access Commonwealth money as far as the bridge program goes or not, but that would be something I would like to see investigated at least. Now, maybe you've done that, I don't know.
Certainly, I've made inquiries with the Bridge Renewal Fund, and their view, without saying don't put in an application, their view is that were you going from a floodway to a bridge, that's an improvement, and they would look on that favourably. Where you're going from a bridge to a floodway, they suggested that their view is that that's a backward step. And so they do not look favourably on those applications for funding. So it is through the SLRP funding that is the highest likelihood of funding for the floodway option for the bridge.
Councillor Higgins.
So I'm just trying to clarify in my own head. If we go for a bridge renewal, and you're saying, Peter, that we're unlikely to get it because we've opted for floodway at this particular time, we can't get funding from 2 or 3 different sources. Does 50% need to come from local? I guess is what I'm asking.
So often, in most cases, if you've got grant funding from one location, it won't be looked at. You won't be looked at for grant funding from another location. Not saying that's the case every time in all circumstances, and you know, odd circumstances come up. I mean, drought funding, all of that kind of stuff that we've seen happening in the last couple of years is quite left field. So, generally speaking, if you've got a grant from one location, you won't get it from another. But there may be occasionally special circumstances come about.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Pollard.
Is the Creek Street fence still in around somewhere in the budget, Peter?
At the moment, the Creek Street fence wasn't considered in the capital program for this current year. Sorry, for the 2021 year. I apologise.
Was it in this year and didn't get done?
We put it up as a program to be considered in the capital project for the current year, and it didn't get up.
Right. So if in fact the fence was pulled down, that's not capital.
That's correct.
And if we put a couple of guardrails at the intersections, which is on understanding that that's what's required, then would that be capital as such?
It's new, effectively it's new infrastructure, yes, would be capital.
Don't we still have some guardrail from the bridge at Spalding?
There would be, yes.
So, I mean, I'm assuming at the moment that there's no more resheeting being done. Is that correct?
The program is, the last road is being done currently.
Right, so we've got another 6 weeks. There are a few little jobs that could be tidied up around the place. That one would certainly save us $77,000, I think it was, that somebody put in as a figure, and may well suit what is required, that the fence is removed and a couple of pieces of guardrail be put in at the intersections.
If council would like to move some form of a motion to include that in the program, then we can do something with that.
If we include it, is it going to be, where are we going to get the money for it? Well, we don't really, well, it's effort, isn't it?
It's a cost that's got to come from somewhere, yes.
Yep. Okay, well, there's a heap of jobs that haven't been done. It could come from there. Well, I mean, where are the costs going to go for the grader drivers and truck drivers, etc., for the next 6 weeks that we're working on the resheeting program?
So there's a range of activities we have. Again, it's whether it's the grader operators or whether it's somebody else. But we've got capital works in footpaths that we're looking to get done. And a few other things like that. There are operational funds for road grading. We hope to get a bit more rain to assist with that. But there are a range of areas where there are available budgets for doing a range of different works.
Well, you know, to me it sounds like a job that could be done that wasn't going to cost a lot. But anyway, it can be done next year when we've got surpluses to spend or something.
Councillor Pomeranke, you had a question?
Just a question to Peter, just about in the report about traffic counts being done. I'm just wondering about the process of how they're done and the consideration of traffic counts around harvest time, when then there's a lot more heavy vehicles on the road, and that's when a lot of wear and tear happens to our roads. And
certainly, there was a cessation of gathering information from traffic counts for a few years. We put it back in a program back into place for gathering data from traffic counts. We certainly note and are aware that there are that at different times of the year in particular roads you'll get a lot different result in those. So the intent is to with the program identify key roads that we'd like to get data for, and picking up that data at various times of the year to try and pick up the spikes in traffic use on those roads. So it's a rolling program, and should continue pretty much indefinitely, picking up the changes in patterns and things like that as well. But yes, noted that different times of the year with harvest make quite a difference to the traffic volumes on a road.
Look, Peter, can we just...
Hang on a minute. Councillor Robinson had his hand up.
No, right, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on Leon, Councillor Pollard, regarding the resheeting and taking money from or somewhere to go to Creek Street fence. We've got to remember that the resheeting program is over budget by 380,000. So there's no money there.
We're putting some money back there, Merv. In the budget review, we're putting the money in.
Yep.
Councillor Brown? Hang on. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, now where were we before that? We were talking about... Oh God, I did have a question.
Lost it, Dave. Beautiful.
I've lost one. I should have written it down.
Traffic counts. Oh,
the traffic counts, yes. Can we get the... I imagine that goes into a spreadsheet. Can we get a look at it just for interest?
Yes, you can. And the intent is that I provide information on a range of roads. It comes out and it doesn't actually come out in an Excel spreadsheet. It's one of those funny programs that gives you've just got to, retype all your numbers into a thing. So the intent is that we do that. I've given it to one of my staff to say, I need a report for council to provide this information. Can you start working on that? So yes, there'll be a report come on data that we've gathered over a number of roads. As soon as I've got that data.
Yeah, I didn't say it had to be tomorrow.
Any more questions? You don't have a question, Councillor Webb? Okay. There is a recommendation that the report be noted.
Have we finished the report yet? Have we finished the report yet? Because I thought we were going to talk about that. It goes on to talk about road watering here.
Okay. If there are more questions then.
Oh, look, I mean,
we need a second.
I didn't know whether Peter had actually finished, because he's got quite a bit here on road watering and stuff like that.
Councillor Brown, can I interrupt there? Councillor Higgins has moved it, so we need a seconder to continue. Councillor Webb, thank you. All those in favour? No? No, oh sorry, discussion first. Procedure. Okay, Councillor Brown.
No, sorry, no. You were moving and seconding the motion.
Yeah,
that's
so
the
now
report.
Discussion.
No, I've got no. I mean, on the report being noted, that's fine. I mean, if Peter hasn't got anything to add about the water stuff that he's got in the report, that's fine.
No, nothing to add, Peter. So, okay. All those in favour? Those against? Thank you. Oh, it's carried. The Corporate and Community Services Report. Someone like to move that, please? Councillor Brown. Seconded Councillor Pomerenke. All those in favour? Against?
Oh, sorry,
That's carried. Thank you. David?
Thank you.
Mine.
Okay, the first report is in relation to our annual loan requirements with the Local Government Finance Authority. So in this year's budget, we had loans set aside for the usual plant program, the 500,000 originally of infrastructure renewal that was added the start of the budget process, and our new seal allowance. So the current tally of those with the adjustment for the infrastructure renewal down to 300,000 is currently sitting at 1.4 million. So the report makes a comparison about whether we should look at a fixed rate borrowing as we have in previous years, or whether we should look at our existing CAD facilities, cash advance debenture. So we currently have $3 million of CAD facilities with the Finance Authority. And although fixed interest rates are at an all-time low, I seem to say this every year and it keeps getting lower, the CAD facility has also come down, and our the interest rates on our reserves that we're term deposit type reserves that we're putting with the authority are also coming down. So in effect, they've all been coming down at the same rate. So there is still the option that if we take out the borrowing with the CAD facility, it means that when we do have spare cash in those reserves, we can essentially pay down the CAD during the year and earn more money on those reserves. So when you actually put that in a little table and compare the difference between taking out a fixed rate borrowing and then investing spare cash at such a low rate, which is less than 1% at the moment, by doing that, you're creating a greater margin in the interest as opposed to putting that spare cash into the flexible facility of a CAD. So as such, my recommendation is that that we go down the CAD path.
I'll move the recommendation as it is in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Seconded Councillor Pomerenke. All those in favour? Against? It's carried.
And can I just note that on that balance is subject to where those projects actually end up at June 30. So some of those projects are still happening, of course, and the figure there is the budget figure. Now, clearly, if one of those we don't spend anywhere near the figure, footpaths, for example, could be one that maybe we won't reach the 300,000 of that infrastructure renewal program. If we don't, then we won't take out that borrowing. So the CAD facility also allows us to make that decision right at the last minute and draw it down in June as we need the cash, as opposed to if we made that fixed rate decision, we would have had to lock in that amount now as an estimate based on where those projects were going to finish up. So that's the other benefit of going to the CAD.
Thank you, David. The monthly financial information items are there for your information. Any questions on that? Okay.
I'll just mention. Can I just mention that? So in there's a little note in the departmental report of the draft budget. So it refers to an audit committee meeting. The members' information, that audit committee meeting required as part of our budget business plan process is scheduled for this Thursday.
Thank you. So the budget review, there is a recommendation with the budget review.
Yep, so In terms of the budget review, we've already had a few discussions today that related back to the budget review and some of the projects. Within the report there, a range of, firstly, operating adjustments, the largest one being the Roads to Recovery payment. So the improvement in the operating position is 323,000. Then there's the capital adjustments. We've talked about resheeting today. There's the Jamestown Stormwater Project, which is not ready to proceed. So there's internal works that need to be reallocated from that, and grant funding as well that we won't receive. They're the main adjustments referred to in the report.
Thank you, David. Any comments or questions, please?
No, I'll move the recommendation as it's in the report.
Seconder, Councillor Pomeranke. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Or is that a question, Councillor Pollard? No,
I'll call for division on that, thanks.
no division called. How do we do that over Zoom?
Oh, you just have to record the names. You just have to record the names of those in favour and then record the names of those against.
Okay, so we don't have to stand up. That's good. I think we'd all see the wrong parts. So those in favour, please show your hands again. So I'll call them out, do I?
Yes, you probably need to call them out for the minutes.
Yeah, Councillor Webb, Councillor Brown, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Moore, Councillor Pomeranke, and Councillor Higgins, and Councillor Scarman. Thank you. Those against? Councillor Pollard. Okay, thank you, Paula. Okay. Community Development Report, James.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, pardon me, just cleared my throat. First of all, I apologise to Council. I don't have any light entertainment with dogs or cats to feature in the current video.
Calm down.
Or a phone, Councillor Brown. Okay, that's been silenced. So just the first report is in regard to the Flinders Mobile Library. And in relation to that, that's the quarterly report that is presented from the library manager. And just to note, this report has come out a little later than what normally occurs, for no other reason than this was presented at the recent meeting of the Flinders Mobile Library Management Committee, which was held later than anticipated due to the current pandemic. And that was successfully held via Zoom. We only had one issue where I accidentally kicked everyone out. So that's a learning experience for everyone. But that's just got obviously the librarian's report and also the circulation statistics, just for members' information. They were the circulation statistics to the end of February. There'll be another set coming probably potentially at the next meeting or possibly at the one after. There's obviously going to be quite a difference in the March, April, May figures, because that's when the activity had to change dramatically due to the pandemic. Although I can report that the truck recommenced today, so it's out and about in somewhat of a very limited format, as in people aren't able to access the internals. It's more of a collect and drop off type setup, but it certainly has been extremely well received by the community, which has been fantastic, and good to see the staff back and doing what they're very good at. Just with regard to that one, funding submissions, Just you're probably well aware of these. I'd informed councillors a little while ago that obviously that project at Victoria Park had been successful in the state government's grassroots football, cricket and netball facility program. And then councillors would well be aware the sporting community were also applying through the next round of that fund for expansion of the courts there as they look to co-share the facilities there between basketball, tennis and netball. Just with regard to activity report, probably a key one there is the Hornsdale Wind Farm Energy Efficiency Fund. We're looking to finalise allocations there, which will be done in the next week and a bit. There's obviously been a slight interruption there with some other matters. Unfortunately, Colin's normally involved in that process, and he's unfortunately unable to have been due to reasons that for family purposes. And that's aside from that, with current grant inquiries, there's obviously a list there, and we continue to tell groups and organisations, whilst we don't know when things are going to be released at the moment due to uncertain times with government allocations and the likes, it's very important to be ready to go, because some of the, as we saw with the recent round of the Rec and Sport funding, a very short time period was enabled to put an application in. And thankfully for the sporting community, they had all their pre-work done, so they were able to do so. And just add at the end there with the Star Club report, there's obviously quite a bit of work being undertaken with regard to management for sports to return to the field, and it varies between from sport to sport. A lot of them have had to lodge, work with their state health authorities and federal health authority and lodge such measures with the Australian Sports Commission, who's an arm of the federal government, and also via the Office of Rec and Sport and through to the state government here in SA. So that's very much in its infancy, and that'll be impacted on how soon restrictions are or are not relaxed. But that's the basis in relation to that report. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, James. Any questions to James? No? Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Higgins?
Oh, I just want to let people know that I actually emailed James and asked the question about when will we know about the drought funding, because I've got people in the community starting to talk to me about one of those projects starting, and James's comment was sometime in the next month, he hoped.
Yes,
so
I think, sorry, councillor, I think another organisation which Councillor Pollard's involved with are also very eager and have been asking the same question.
Yeah. I just think that because our communities are looking for those activities to start, it's just useful to know. So thanks, James.
No, look, that's fine, and very much so in relation to those projects of with the design of that funding program to employ local contractors to kickstart your local economy. So that's very important, and I did follow up with them yesterday. I'm just waiting to hear back. So as they just don't want to give a definitive answer at the moment, but our neighbours have recently had their funding announced, so we may not be far away, hopefully.
Any other questions to James? Okay, CEO's report. Would someone like to move we accept that? Councillor Robinson, seconded Councillor Webb. All those in favour? Against? That is carried.
So just review of confidential minutes provided for information, and the separate report is noted there. For the action list, it's probably fair to say I won't be able to tell you a lot about that if you've got any questions, but if there were any questions, we might take them on notice. Yep.
Okay, so there's the two late reports. I'll just do what everyone else is doing and find that elsewhere. Where are they? Development application. Oh, that's done. I'm just trying to find them. Thank you.
Excuse me a moment, I'll be away
Here we
from the
go.
table.
Okay, you get that, Paula? Okay, which one have I got?
So which report are we going to? The hardship policy?
Yeah,
Okay,
14.1.2.
Yep, okay. Peter, would you like to,
We've got Kathy's out of the room.
do we need to wait for Kathy to come back?
No, no, as long as she's recorded as leaving the meeting, record when she comes back.
Yeah, okay. So the hardship policy here that's comes about as a result of COVID-19. So again, Colin's put this together. I spoke with David briefly this morning. David might be able to provide a little bit more information on it, but there's a sense that this may be better to lay on the table at the moment. It's not critical to approve at this meeting. While we just review some other council policies, there's a sense that this is more of a guideline than, and probably a little longer than it needs to be, and that there may be some more refinement of that. I haven't been able to talk to Colin about it to get his view on it, but propose that perhaps this lay on the table.
All right, well, if you want a motion that it lay on the table, I'm happy to move that, or we just do nothing and move to the next item.
Yeah, I just wanted to more information. I don't think that this does what we need it to do. There were bits that read, it was very generic, and I would like to see what other councils have done to make it a bit shorter, but also right on page 10 of it, like an example process map is provided at appendix 3 and it wasn't there. So there were bits that I just needed more information around, please. So yes, lay on the table.
I'll move that it lay on the table.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Brown and Councillor Robinson. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Okay, the Old Gladstone High School.
Again, so 14.1.3, and are there any questions with regard to this report?
Well, I'm not quite sure that, I know there's a recommendation there, but I'd like to ask Colin, like Colin's done this work and I'd probably like to talk to Colin a bit more about it. I'm wondering if this one couldn't lay on the table too until Colin's back.
So that's a motion, is it, Councillor Brown?
Look, I mean, I'm happy to entertain a bit of discussion before I move it, but I'm happy to move that too. Like that's where my
we'll take
thoughts
a
are.
question from Kathy. Councillor Webb.
Yes, there is a time frame on this one, which is the end of the week.
Yeah, I do remember reading that, but
I've spoken to John Hawkins Clark from the GCDTA to find out whether there was anything he wanted to add in light of this. It still stands. The GCDTA is willing to take over the complete management of it. They're the ones that are funding the work that's being done on the existing high school, and you know, they would just like to amalgamate the whole lot. With the considerations that Colin has gone to with trying to find a way around it, Yes, it would probably be in council's name, but the GCDTA, under a memorandum of understanding, would be operating the site with all of its appurtenances.
It just flopped.
Oops, you're gone, Dean. Good man. That's handy.
Where's he gone?
Perhaps we should learn how to do that more often.
Don't be like that.
Microphone, but Ben.
Yeah, look, sorry about that. Phone rang and it blanks the screen out. Look, it flies in the face of what we're trying to achieve in rationalising buildings, and I mean, look, I probably haven't done it. I don't know enough to know, how much use or anything this is. I really, but ultimately, council grant programs, all sorts of things go towards funding these, and like people get attached to things, I suppose, in their community, but is it in the ratepayers' interest that we hang on to or take control of this property, and then potentially council ends up with a large liability? And it's all right to say that some group's going to look after it with a memorandum of understanding. If that group disbands, this property is under the care and control of council, and we could have a significant liability. That's my great concern with it.
I've got a question for Councillor Webb. Hopefully she can answer. Peter, can you turn yours off for a bit? How will the 80,000 be paid for? Will it be by council in the first instance, with the GCDTA paying it back either immediately or with a loan which will be part of the MOU, or is this all to be decided afterwards when planning the MOU once the property has been purchased, if passed by council?
Yeah,
I presume there's been some
it's
discussion with GCDTA around the workings of this proposal.
okay.
Councillor Webb?
In the second part of what Colin...
Can't hear you, Councillor Webb.
Pardon?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
can hear Kathy.
It's okay.
In the second part of what Colin had investigated, it would not be a matter of purchase. It would still be under Crown lands. I'm just trying to look for the relevant...
Look, yeah, I understand what you're saying, Kathy. I read that there, that we wouldn't actually be paying for it, but
yeah,
there is still the ongoing, like, well, if they want 80,000, we're not interested, basically, is what would be the case. But it's just the ongoing liability of all these old buildings. I mean,
yeah. Well, as it currently stands, council has not done any maintenance on the old high school. The GCDTA has been doing it all, including trying to reinstate the rear wall. If you have a look at the photograph of the aerial view, where the building extends out to the back of the old high school, that is the original high school. The later addition is that one that fronts onto the street, and the back wall is what we're trying to reinstate. The floor was infilled with dirt, so that's all had to be dug out. That's all been done by volunteers through the GCDTA. Council hasn't put anything into it whatsoever. So they are prepared to do the work. Needless to say, the kindergarten doesn't need any work, and yes, the education department would like to recoup some money, but Colin is looking into a viable way of it, perhaps having it come through so that there is no money changing hands, in which case the education department will miss out. But, we are asking for the support of council in trying to get these investigations to go through, for a group that is willing to do the work, maintain it. We have a number of our subsidiary committees that can use both facilities, and being able to keep the history of Gladstone and the state intact, because they were it was the earliest high school in rural South Australia. So we're trying to maintain that history. The town viability, and people are interested in doing that.
I think it's probably a project that Gladstone is prepared to take on. And yes, it does become a council asset, but the Gladstone community is very proactive in supporting themselves. So I feel it's a project worth considering. Councillor Brown?
Just a question to David. If this comes under the care and control of council, I would assume we would have to insure the buildings. Would that be right, David?
Okay, so I guess the first step is if we take on an asset, it gets put on our asset register. All of those assets are insured by us. Sorry, I've forgotten the last part of the question.
No, that was basically the question. If it becomes under the care and control of council, we have to insure it, which is the cost to council. It's not free, and yeah, and then there's ongoing, and as I said, there's ongoing liabilities for council if things aren't managed properly. It's under our care and control.
David?
Yeah, there is certainly a few sites around the council that there can be an agreement that the group actually reimburses a portion of the insurance costs. That is a possibility as well, and that's what happens with the Gladstone Stadium at the moment. That I think they reimburse 50% of the cost in the nature that facility runs.
Thank you, David. I think for something that the Gladstone community is passionate about, it's worth considering. Councillor Higgins?
Within the last 5 years, I've been in that building when it was still running as a kindergarten. The condition of the building at the moment is actually very good. And so it wouldn't cost us as a council in the short run. And if GD, the Gladstone Community Group, wish to use it, and therefore use equals better maintenance, then I'm in favour of this. I'm just putting it out there.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. Any other comments from anyone? Councillor Pollard?
Have we determined that we're actually going to take it on without any upfront cost? Or is that what we're trying to do? I did read it once and it said it did, and then the next time I read it, it said they were hoping to get it that way. So is it clear that we're not going to pay the $80,000 up front, one? And two, I agree with what Ben says, but I don't, because he's correct, but I don't think it's a good reason to not do this exercise, because if the Gladstone Group keep going, everything will be sweet. And then I take Ben's point that if they don't, it comes back to us. And because I understand that it's Crown land, we can't sell it anyway if it does, if they do fall. Is that correct? Am I on the right track or not? Which track am I on?
I think you're fairly close, Leon. Yes, that's my understanding.
Councillor Webb, did you have an answer for that?
Yeah, just looking back into the letter, towards the bottom of the letter, in discussions with both project officers, there is a possibility of further investigations into having the kindergarten being handed back to Crown Lands Department, and through the objects of the Crown Land Management Act 2009, which is summary to provide a system for the management of Crown land that achieves a balance between the social, economic and environmental needs of the community. So to achieve any further discussions with these two agencies, council must decide if council is willing to take on care and control. Now, with the memorandum of understanding, then that's the care comes under the guise of the GCGTA. So we will minimise as much as possible any cost to council. So you know, I can understand the reluctance of some members, but you know, the department needs an answer fairly quickly, and there are options to be explored a little bit further until such time, you know, when Colin comes back, because he has been handling it all. And I think we can vote for it. We're not going to buy it as a council. That's always been clear. But there are still other, you know, these avenues to be explored. I think just some support would be nice.
Councillor Robinson, you had a question earlier?
Yeah. I think we need, if we go with that recommendation, we need to add in there that there's no cost to council. I mean, it doesn't say that, and I think, you know, a lot has been said. We're not going to spend 80,000 on it or to buy it, but I think if that motion is moved, we need to add that at no cost to council.
No, there is a line just above what I read that says council should not in any way enter into negotiations to purchase the property.
But I'm looking at the recommendation.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that, but there's a couple more questions still to come. Denise, sorry.
No, I was just checking that we weren't spending $80,000 because my support is not there if we have to spend the money. Thank you.
Ben and then Leon.
Look, I don't know whether mine's working or not. Yeah, it's green now. Look, I've been working at encouraging the Spalding community, especially, and in the Yakka community with little less success, to, you know, dispose of buildings that are you know, at least underutilised in the community, and they're council-owned buildings. They have a long-term liability to ratepayers. The one I'm sort of trying to encourage, and we've discussed it, and people are fairly comfortable with it, is the lodge building. I mean, if we keep that, we need to spend about $80,000 on a new roof and a new ceiling, and there is no benefit to the ratepayers in general of doing that. And then when we relocate the tennis courts to the precinct at the Oval, there will be another building that will potentially come up and be able to be sold. And so for me to be, and council has been working towards that building rationalisation and working with the Spalding community, and we've done some in Jamestown with the old restaurant building. We sold that. So we're working towards selling some buildings, and then in another community we're working towards acquiring buildings that I'm struggling to see any real use for within the community, and that couldn't be done at other, you know, couldn't be managed out of an existing building that council owns. But anyway,
Councillor Webb.
That's my point I want to make.
Councillor Webb.
No, we have no other buildings that we can utilise.
For,
I mean, we have an idea for a gallery, storage for the history group, and being able to have everything just in one site that they can easily access instead of having to go under the stairs to the dungeon in the hall. And considering the age group that they are, it would be preferable. And trying to, you know, focus and utilise that portion of the history, and you know, even the Discovery Centre is running out of space, and we own that space. It's not council owned. We own that property. And manage it ourselves, so we have the capability.
I mean, that's exactly what we've done in Spalding, is we've actually brought the history group into the hall precinct with some work in the front rooms. And yes, they've got less space than they had in the old building, but you know, that requires some adjustment in, but the history group's happy to be where they are, and we've got everything in one precinct, which going forward, communities are not getting a lot bigger. They're struggling to maintain their current size, and it gets harder and harder to maintain. Somebody's pinched my, it was Leon pinching something, but it gets harder and harder to maintain all these buildings, and I mean, we've got to be realistic about it. That's my view.
That's all very good for Spalding, but I just listening to Kathy, I feel perhaps Gladstone has different circumstances. Now, Leon, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, I just noticed there that the negotiations are with the Department of Environment and Education, which they actually own the building, I assume. So they're the ones that have to transfer that to Department of Land so we can actually get it for nothing. Is that how I understand it?
Yeah, from the way I understand it, even though the Education Department has it now, so that's a state facility, they can sell it, which defies reasoning to me. Otherwise, it can be handed back to Crown Lands and passed on to another government instrumentality, of which local government is considered one.
The only apart from the insurance that we discussed earlier, the only other cost is that because we have it under care and control and it's on our plant register, that means we have to spend a portion of the value of that in repairs and maintenance, not necessarily to that building, but just adds to the. I mean, I'm quite happy to support it, provided there is no additional cost. Well, there is some running cost over a period of time. Don't think it'd be very much. David could probably give us some estimate on that, but I'm most concerned that we don't get tangled up, and I see it in there, but we do not, under any heading, get tangled up in buying it.
Oh, I understand that.
And I agree with Ben for once, that we've been trying for probably 10 years to get rid of buildings. This one is in pretty good shape. I take Denise's comment on that, and just from viewing it from the outside, it's actually a pretty reasonably modern building. You wouldn't expect it to cost the Gladstone people much money to run it, and provided that they're going to be around for the next 30 years, well, that's probably pretty good, and I'd be prepared to support it.
Councillor Robinson?
Yeah, I'll just make the comment that if we put on the motion at no cost to council, if for some reason the Gladstone community group ceased to exist, well, then we just hand it back to Crown Land. As simple as that. There'll be no cost to council.
They're unlikely to accept it back in rundown condition. They would say you've neglected a building that we handed to your care and control, and they would be fairly serious about the care.
Peter?
Yeah, look, I think I think Colin's usually fairly careful with his recommendations, and whilst the report is clear that there's that purchasing the property is not intended in any discussions with the department. I think to actually say at no cost to you might end up with a fee of $50, and you can't go through with it because there's a fee of $50. So I think to amend the recommendation to put that monetary limit of nothing does provide some challenges when the intent of it, if council choose to accept or to go into those negotiations about the transfer of the land for care and control, that putting a monetary limit of nil on it probably very limiting.
Comment, Councillor Robinson.
Well, if that's the case, do we put it in the motion that and any cost to acquiring this building comes from the Gladstone Community Development Tourism Association?
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, look, without going into any detail, there will be other buildings in similar circumstances within the council area that we currently hold where we pay the insurance. Now, the majority of them, except for the Gladstone Stadium, the majority of them, I believe David will correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of them, I believe, we pick up the insurance on. So, if you're going to treat people fairly, then we've got to pick up the insurance if we pick up the building, if that's what we do for other groups in other communities. So there will undoubtedly be a cost to council if we go ahead with it. You can't treat one group differently to the way we treat every other group. That would be, the Gladstone community could quite rightly feel hard done by in those circumstances, and they may actually feel hard done by with their stadium. On Councillor Moore could probably tell me what happens in Jamestown with the big shed and all that. But look, I just don't keep all that detail in my head, but people that are involved would. So I think there's the consideration is it's gonna cost council money if we go ahead with it. The idea that it's not is a furphy.
Councillor Webb.
Well, that can all be sorted out under a memorandum of understanding, and the GCDTA is cognisant of that. So minimising the cost to council is agreed.
Councillor Robinson, you had another question?
Well, this community is keen to have it. If having at no cost to council in the motion is too restrictive, well, whether we at minimal cost or something to that effect. But I think because the community wants to do something with it, we should support it.
So did you want to add that? Would that work, Peter?
I think at minimal cost is
it's already there in my view.
It's implied.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. It's already there. It's implied. I'd agree. Yeah.
Councillor Robinson, are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yes.
Councillor Pollard, you had another question?
I was just going to move the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pollard. Is that seconded, Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
All those in favour?
Wait a minute.
Hang on.
In moving that motion, I'll also say that it goes against my grain in that we have spent a lot of time trying to work out what properties to get rid of, and we are adding one. I take Ben's point on that. However, there comes a time when some things are worth doing, and I think this one's worth doing.
Thank you, Councillor Pollard.
Yep.
Councillor Moore?
In supporting the recommendation, there is a spelling mistake. That Yanya should have 2 Y's in it. And Paul, to make that.
Thank you.
Change, please.
So, motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Members' reports. We go around the table. We'll start with Councillor Webb. Do you have any reports?
No. I will happily report to the GCDTA tomorrow night's meeting. Thank you all.
Councillor Pollard.
Well, I've been exercising social distancing to the nth degree, and therefore I have no reports.
Thank you. Councillor Pomeranki. Thank you.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Moore.
Nothing to report.
Councillor Robinson.
No, I have nothing to report.
Councillor Higgins.
Yep, just letting people know that the Laura Community Development Group are still operating, but they're doing all of their meetings by email. So it's slow, but we are continuing to record what's going on in the community in that way. So I just want to let you know that.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Look, I think I've already covered the stuff with the. I went to a meeting at the Washpool Hall and the meeting on the dog park in Spalding, but I think I've already covered all of those really. So yeah, I don't think there's anything to add. Might talk about it a bit more in general business on one or two other things.
Okay. I was, as acting mayor, you want to just shut yours down? Thank you, Peter. I was included in the meeting with the Premier last week via Zoom, of course. It was just a COVID update. Two councils, Adelaide and Charles Sturt, gave a short summary of how COVID-19 is and may affect them over the coming months. Adelaide rate base is probably hardest hit due to the most of their rates come from the commercial sector. So they are looking at around a 50% rate reduction due to the number of calls for assistance they are getting daily. They have estimated the suggested bill by Labor will cost them $10 million per quarter. Similarly, Charles Sturt will be affected in the tune of $27 million from their normal $10 million budget. They have been running a 3 to 4 year plan of stimulation and looking at adding a further 2 years to encourage employment. But with the opposition bill, it will tie their hands in this growth program. Premier Marshall called the bill a lazy bill, and news late last week, the independents were talking about not supporting the bill. He also said he was pleased with the effective and varied responses councils are putting in place. The bill does not encourage this during the COVID-19 period. He encouraged councils to utilise grants and low interest rates to encourage growth. The bill has now been deferred to late June. COVID-19 SA should be proud of the way we have worked together and to be in such a positive space. We have had the highest compliance, which he believes is due to our community mindedness. This said, they will not lift too many restrictions too early, as other countries have done to their detriment. A fun fact, SA schools, only 3.2% are still being homeschooled, where interstate figures are almost reversed. Some announcements from Malcolm McCormick to come soon, which will be aimed at councils for economic stimulation. That was about it for that meeting. I've been in a couple of other Zoom meetings, but yeah, it was just basic COVID information really that everyone gets. So now we go to confidential, is that correct? Yep, okay. Okay, so someone like to move that we go into confidence? Councillor Pollard, seconded Councillor Pomeranki. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. All to catch up. And we're back recording. So what is left now?
General business.
Okay. Now, due to Colin's personal circumstances, there was another item listed as confidential. It was a state government audit response. We have extra time for that, so when Colin comes back, we can then bring that to a meeting. And we don't need a motion by the sounds of it, so it will just yeah, be a later date. General business. Go around the table again. Councillor Webb shaking her head. Councillor Pollard.
Not at this stage.
Councillor Pomerenke. Councillor Moore.
No.
Councillor Robinson.
No.
Councillor Higgins.
I'm still wondering about where we sit in terms of the budget and the audit committee that meets on Thursday. But the proposed budget for 2021, do we need to do any more work on that at this stage?
Yes, we do. We need to move a motion now that the budget the draft budget go out to public consultation, subject to a review by the audit committee at its meeting on, I've just forgotten the date. I've got it here, but it's hiding behind there. It's in an email, but it's Thursday. It's Thursday night this week, I think.
21st.
21st, yeah. So we need to move that the draft budget, we accept the draft budget and to go out to public consultation, subject to it being reviewed by the audit committee at its meeting on the 21st of May.
Do we need to perhaps schedule a special meeting afterwards if
No.
it is required?
No.
Hang on a minute. Paula has. Do you want to put your speaker on?
Just need clarification on that motion, please, Ben. Just, you said moving the draft budget, does that include the annual business plan as well?
Yeah, yes, look, sorry, it does. It's draft budget, annual business, draft budget and annual business plan, I think the correct wording is, and go out to public consultation subject to review by the audit committee. But I'm not actually looking at the motion, I was doing it from memory, sorry.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry about that feedback, folks. It's a bit hard juggling in this room. So that's a motion. Seconded by Councillor Pollard.
No.
All those in favour?
No, I'm not seconding that, no.
No.
I'll move an amendment to the motion. That
okay.
That the motion as read be upheld, but the planned water bores be removed because we don't have enough information there. And if it's in the budget, it will go ahead and we will never hear about it because it's under $100,000.
Look, this is, I'll just clear this up. This is still a draft budget, and until we actually adopt the budget, we can still make an adjustment to it. And just for expediency, I'm quite concerned about that too, but we can deal with it when we adopt the budget. Does that clear that up for you, Leon?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't get forgotten.
Yeah, no, we won't forget it.
It's on your head.
Yes, water tanks.
But we need a seconder, don't we? Do we need a seconder? Did we get a seconder?
Yeah, no, I didn't get one.
Sorry,
Just
everybody.
clarification here, folks. Hang on a minute.
Does Leon's motion therefore lapse for want of a seconder?
I'll withdraw that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
My comment is I'd like to see the draft budget after the audit committee has a look at it and see what their recommendations are. I would like to then see it before it goes out to the public.
Can I come back to that? Perhaps to clear that up. If we make, if the audit committee makes any recommendations, it will have to come back to council at a subsequent special meeting. If we don't make any recommendations, it can go forward as it is now, and then any changes can happen before we actually adopt the budget. But if the audit committee were to make some recommendations, then we can't actually change anything. We can only recommend to council that happens. So there would have to be a special meeting. Okay, so that would happen if we made any changes.
Right.
Peter?
Just clarifying, those changes would want to be material. So if the changes were simply that a word here or there, it's not a material change. Is that what you get to Green? Yep.
Yeah, no, that's right. They'd have, if it was just typos and things like that, yeah. No, they have to be significant recommendations, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we have hang on. Juggling. So we have a motion, and was that seconded? That was seconded by Councillor Pollard, wasn't it?
No.
No? Right, so we've...
Pomeranke. Councillor Pomeranke.
Okay, so we haven't got a seconder yet. Okay, Councillor Pomeranke. Okay. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Now, availability for a, hang on, yep, availability for a special meeting if it is required. Now, the meeting for the audit committee is on Thursday. If we were to perhaps call a meeting on Friday, what is the room's thought on that? Anyone put your thumbs down if you can't do Friday at any stage?
Just made a comment. 7 o'clock on Friday night will be fine.
Hang on, start again, Merv. We all had our sound off here.
7 o'clock Friday night will be fine by me.
That's bloody pub time. What are you, man?
That sounds good.
Well, the pub won't be open, Leon. So
my pub will be.
So I gather from that everyone else will be available at 7 o'clock if required. Okay, yeah. That's good.
You can bring a cup of tea, Leon.
Don't drink on the show.
No, bring a cup of tea, Leon.
David Ratley, can I ask you if 7 o'clock Friday is okay?
I haven't got anything else on.
Are you only saying that because everyone else has put pressure on you?
No, of course not. But of course, this is an emergency backup schedule, and we would hope that the audit committee make any material changes, and it's not required.
Okay. So, if there's no further business,
general business we're still doing, aren't we?
Are we still doing general business?
Yes.
That's what I did that in.
All right. Councillor Brown.
But I thought, yeah. Look, the only one I got is that photo I sent around this morning. I don't know how many have actually been able to have a look at it.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to Peter, or like, would you look at something like that? Because I mean, I've seen those work. They do deliver massive efficiencies in water fill time, because a slow fill out of a creek or a pipeline or whatever, and then when the trucks pull up, they're full in 2 minutes. Like they do create significant efficiencies if water's a problem, and it might be another way of looking at solving some of your water issues. And you can buy, you could have, I mean, if they have one of those, they could hook it into, without much infrastructure, you could hook it into my own water supply here, and it would fill overnight and probably keep up. I just have to run a pump, which would be very relatively cheap water compared to some of the alternatives. That's all. So I mean, I'm not saying you buy a new one like the one I put up, but yeah. Anyway, just sort of float it. That's all.
Yeah, and I appreciate having that said around. Certainly, you know the purpose of the exercise is to try and find some efficiencies and find some ways that we can improve the processes. So, you know, we'd certainly be happy to look at those sorts of options. We thought about bladders and whether that gave us any advantage, because they're pretty easy to set up and move about, but again, you know, longevity, they probably don't have the life. So yeah, we're interested in looking at different options for sure.
Okay.
Dog's back again there. Any other questions?
No, the only other thing, I covered the washpool hall enough before, didn't I, for people to be comfortable with that?
I think so. Any other questions have been regarding the washpool hall? No. So no other. Oh, Councillor
Leon's
Pollard?
waving around.
Yeah. There's been a lot of small communities the size of Washpool that have switched the lights off around the place, Balloli East, Balloli North, Canal, etc. How serious are they about keeping things going down there? Ben?
Look, there's a lot of interest there. It is unlike what we were talking about earlier, this is a council-owned building. It's a council-owned hall. It's still standing. The other halls, as far as I understand that you're referring to, aren't owned by the council. It could be regarded as having some significant historical value in that it is the only one of those old corrugated iron schoolhouses, and they were all over the state that I know of that's still standing. It was built in 1913, I think, same as the Gladstone High School, but it's a building owned by council, and it's on our asset register, and like they seem fairly keen. I'd say they're fairly motivated. They've been talking to Peter and Shaker, and there's been some, several email communications, and there's been some, council's done some minor repair work there on a chimney, and without looking at the emails, I couldn't tell you, but I've seen a number of emails, and there's certain commitments council will do certain things. So I think it's just about them moving that forward, which is what they want to do. And the process I've put in place through that motion, I think, is an important thing to do before we get too far down the track.
Councillor Robinson?
Yeah, I'd just like to make the comment and just back what Ben is saying. They are a strong community down there, and they've got a very good tennis team that's still going, and that would be used as well. And so I think it's worth going through the steps as been mentioned earlier.
Councillor Pollard?
Question to Peter. What is the status of the Memorial Park surrounds as far as getting them? They were going to be sealed, but I presume that's off. There's a problem at the east-west corner. No, that's not right. Southeast
Northwest.
corner. Yeah, bugger off. Thanks, man. Southeast corner, where there's a Telstra pit sitting up out of the ground. We're going to do something temporary there to get pedestrians across it. And will that have to be pulled down to do the other job? Where are we up to with it? It's a good job. It looks very good. The water doesn't run along the western side, but I can see a bump in it. Nobody else can. So can you give us an update on it, Peter? Thanks.
Sure. The pit area there, we're not likely to lower the pit. We'll be able to put a little culvert in there, footpath across to make that a trafficable for foot traffic, and improve a little access to that corner gate that's on that end there as well. And with regard to the water flow, etc. there, we're again reviewing our water flows there. If we need to do some more work there to make the water flow a little better, we will certainly do that. And I've commenced some conversation with Boral with regard to completion of the program and when we might be able to do that.
But it doesn't look as though it'll be in the near future because
It
of the
doesn't.
weather.
No, that's right. That's right.
So but there wouldn't be, I mean, it is prepared properly, so
Yes.
there wouldn't be much touch-up work to get it so that it would be able to be sealed when the weather warms up.
That's right. If we've got the water running away from it, it won't get too spongy or anything like that. And again, dry weather, get some warmth, and be able to finish it off.
Okay, good work.
Councillor
Yeah, going back to the Washpool Hall, they were asking for our support in principle. I'm just wondering what's, they didn't delineate what support they were asking for. So perhaps that could be clarified.
Well, I'm unsure. You didn't get the email I sent you with the drawings on the back?
Yes, but it didn't say what involvement council would have. They were just asking for support in principle.
Oh no, look, they're looking at doing it from same as any upgrade at any hall. They're looking at doing it themselves through grant funding, etc. Whereas the maintenance of the existing hall is the same as the maintenance of the existing hall in Gladstone. It's a council-owned hall, and it's council's responsibility to maintain its halls that it owns.
Okay.
If that's the determination. But like, the first thing that needs to happen is what I put in that motion earlier in motions without notice, is that we do a structural assessment of the building that's there. If it's gonna, we would look very foolish to be applying for grants, helping a community group apply for grants, building a new building on the back of a hall that blows over in 2 years' time, because we haven't done the appropriate work first. So that's why I put that motion up. The other part that I sent around hasn't come to council yet. It'll come to council next meeting. By that time, hopefully that structural assessment's been done by council's building inspector. We don't, if our building inspector can do it, and I'm pretty sure he can, then that would be, there's no huge, there's no outside people being brought in to do that. So that's a start anyway. And then they're just asking for in principle support to go ahead and pursue grant funding and look at renovating a building that council owns.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, you had a question?
No, not now. No, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Higgins.
Just on to a new topic. In the last, and we're not sort of sitting around the table, I take lots of notes, and so over the last few meetings I've written down things like, do we need to define service levels? What are the community expectations about service levels? Because we've talked about it a couple of times. I think I'm wondering whether at some stage we need to put aside some time to do some defining of what that means for us as a council. Some other reading. I'm just wanting to work more strongly in the risk management area for us as a council group. Do we need some more strategy around that? Since that's what our role looks to be. And my last one is, I'm wondering whether we as a council need to acknowledge land every time we open a meeting, Aboriginal land. There you go, folks.
The Aboriginal land, I've often thought that myself. Sorry, yep. I guess that's something we need to look at. I shall follow up on that.
A lot of councils do it.
And the other two items, I think, hopefully we'll soon be back in face-to-face meetings, and I reckon that would be an ideal time to perhaps do a bit of a workshop when we are allowed in the room together again. I'm pretty sure that's not too far away at all. And it certainly makes conversation easier for things like that you've suggested, yeah. Councillor Higgins.
All I'm asking is that
Pollard?
You know, just backing up the service levels one, that's been, people use it without qualification, and we just need to put some qualifications on our service levels. And it can either be done by a subcommittee of council or a full council, or, you know, whoever's interested. I certainly am. I know
probably most of us are interested in that, and yeah, a workshop would probably get things started.
Thank you.
Look, our asset management plans, when they're in place and up and running properly on all our buildings, that'll be part of it. The intervention and the service levels and the standards. Peter might want to comment on that, but I would expect that they will sit underneath and drive that standard of service that we deliver in public space, in buildings, in road infrastructure, etc. Like that's the idea of having proper asset management plans, so that all happens, or we hope it happens. Would that be a fair comment, Peter?
That's a fair comment, but there are two separate levels of service that you consider. One of those is technical levels of service that that relates to, if you like, more technical things, and then there's your public levels of service. So how does it, and that's the level, that's the strategic level, if you like, that council are involved with. What level of service do you want your buildings to provide? What level of service do you want your roads to provide? So, that's your category 1s, category 2s, etc. in your roads. But in your buildings, do you, a level of service for your halls could be that the main hall is presented in a tidy and usable condition. They're broad. They can be quite broad statements, but they're more around what you want it to look like. That your shed out the back, isn't a public facility, so it gets minimal maintenance. Maintenance only as required to keep it structurally sound. So the discussion around levels of service for council is really around that higher level of service that makes sense to the general public. Less about we're going to go and mow the lawn 3 times a year, or whatever it might happen to be. You can get into some of that for sure, but again, there's a distinction between the two.
Councillor Higgins?
What I'm looking for is that I think in most communities it's an implied service level, like you have an expectation. So to move from the implied to the explicit is what I'm hoping that we would manage through some sort of conversations and decent workshopping of the activity. Thank you.
Councillor Pollard?
Can you give me some examples of technical service levels, Peter, please?
Technical level of service is, bitumen is renewed when it's, when evidence of cracking or, horizontal cracking, crocodile cracking, or before it gets to that stage. Inspection of treatment plants at various stages. things that are not, you know, that your public aren't necessarily interfacing with, and that they're not going to go around and measure. It's what impacts the public, as opposed to what from a technical building maintenance point of view, or CWMS maintenance or roads maintenance point of view, is required for the ongoing full life of the asset. You know, bridge inspections by a bridge inspector at intervals really have no impact on the general public. So, you know, you're not going to have a discussion on those for the general public, but you're interested to know that they are being, that inspections are being carried out, and the assets are works are programmed from those. That's that's broadly what it's about.
And do you have those levels defined already?
It's more difficult than you'd think to do, but we've got some progress in some of those areas with the CWMS. We've got some of those pretty much all of the technical levels of service defined. The roads we're getting closer to, and same with parks. We started on parks, the public open spaces, quite a while ago, and it drew us into land ownership and quite a significant project in terms of who owns the land, what are the leases, etc., to get down to which of the parcels that we need to do particular things on. There was more work required in that, and a hold up in that was a single point of reference for all of the information associated with land management, because you end up with 3 or 4 different locations for holding that information, whether it be your rates information, your general land information, other asset databases. So defining what you own then enables you to say, well, we want to, that's a parcel of land that from a community perspective is mown, 4 times a year, or it's only mown to reduce the fire risk at a particular time of the year, or it's the main street and needs to have a tidy and clean appearance all the time.
Okay with that, Councillor Pollard? Okay. Councillor Brown.
Look, just something come to mind when we're talking about this, and that's some years ago, I can't remember, I think you were here, we had a look at what we do in our public toilets and what it cost us, and whether we wanted to, I don't know whether you were here then, Peter, or not, but like we knew just before, so you've seen the report, but it was...
No, it was just, the report was done just before I came.
Yeah, but anyway, that report talked about public toilets, what we were doing in them and what it was costing council, and it was a significant amount of money, but it was regarded as a good level of service, and we decided to maintain that level of spending.
That's right. Again, levels of service can be about other services you might provide to the community, the Star Club stuff, those sorts of things. What level of service across facilities and to sporting groups and things like that. So it's not all just about hard assets. It can be about other things as well.
Any other general, Councillor Webb?
You're muted, Kathy.
Just off the top of my head, going back some time ago, we voted for the extension of the land to the Laura Caravan Park. Did we have a stipulation on how much of that land?
I'd have to take that on notice, I think. And
I know that. No, it's just that they've been doing such a marvellous job landscaping it, etc. But it's actually covering the entire block down to those trees at the back. So I didn't think we'd actually voted for that much land. So, I'm just querying it as to how much we had actually apportioned to them.
Thank you.
Don't
That's a
remember.
question on notice.
I hope it was all of it because, like you say, Kathy, they're very busy landscaping and doing an amazing amount of work as a volunteer group.
Oh yes, definitely. It's looking
I
beautiful.
thought it was to the pine trees myself. That's what I had in my head.
Yeah, and
I,
About you,
yeah.
Councillor
Well, I
Higgins?
had 50 metres, and that's certainly not going to cover that entire area. So, but you know, between stone
Okay.
walls going up and little roadways, etc., they are doing a magnificent job, and it looks beautiful. But you know, it's just querying the amount that we actually ceded to them.
Okay, thank you. Any other general business? Just one last comment before we close. A comment from Colin. He would like to thank all those who have sent kind messages in the past couple of days. If that is all, then I declare the meeting closed at 11:31. Yeah,
See you.
you want to hang on, Paula?